Welcome into the first edition of Canadian Basketball Weekly here on the Maple Minute. I am your host, Elliot Russenholt. This is the show about all things Canadian basketball at all levels of the game. I'm talking NBA, NCAA, U Sports, CBL when we talk about it when it comes up, and even high school prep as well, if you want to count that. And we're just going to talk Canadian basketball. It's going to be great. I'm going to get you guys, everybody up to speed on what's happened in the last week. So let's just get right into it right away. We're going to start with our first segment of the show, NBA Canadian of the Week. This is a player at the NBA level that either had a really great performance in the last week or just a great week in general. I'm sure some of you will think of who it might be, but I'm going to throw a little bit of a curveball for this first segment. And I'm going to go with Benedict Mathurin, who on Monday night had a fantastic performance against the Pistons. He had 30 points, 7 rebounds, 8 assists, and 2 steals. Shot 10 of 17 from the field and 3 of 5 from 3. The second-year wing from Arizona is just showing out. He's had a couple good performances this year already. Super excited to see where it takes him. I think he could be an all-star one day, and a game like this just shows it. I will say I normally won't do – sometimes I will do honorable mentions. I normally won't. I got to give an honorable mention to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He had 38 points last week against the Warriors in a win, and he's averaging over 30 points. He had another 30 last night against the Jazz. He's just looking unbelievable for the Thunder, and it's showing that great performance over the summer with Team Canada is A, not going to waste, and 2 is just continuation that he is one of the best players. I'm going to say it right now. He might be one of the best players in the world, probably top 15 just based off those performances. All right. Already into the next segment. This is how fast the show is going to roll. It's going to roll this quickly. It's going to be an easy way for you to get in your catch up of the last week for Canadians in basketball around North America, the world, if we even get to it. We're going to go on to now the NCAA equivalent, the NCAA Canadian Standout of the Week. Now, over the last week and a bit, Canadians have been showing up over across the border, down south in the United States. They've been showing out. Just going to throw out some names: Xavier Lee, Vashawn Alette. But the man who did have everybody on notice, you already know who it is. And he might be a guy who comes up a couple times this year. It's Zach Edey. Played Alabama and the Crimson Tide back home in Toronto. Just dropped a nice light 35 and 7 on 12 of 20 shooting. Also went perfect from the free throw line, hitting all 11 of his free throws. Those 35 points helped his Purdue Boilermakers over the Crimson Tide in a 92-86 win. There's your NCAA standout of the week. Now we're going to switch right into it would normally be the U Sports Player of the Week, but we're going to do for the first half since they are currently on winter break. I think everybody knows who it is. It's the leading scorer in the country. He's one of the best players in U Sports, bar none. It's hard to argue. Showed people there. It's really difficult to not go with him as first half player. He looks like he's just able to do whatever he wants for UVic, and it's showing in results. And we'll get to that here in a moment. I do want to show an honorable mention to Dalhousie and Malcolm Christie, who's had some unreal games this year. 44 and 51 bombs is just nuts at the U Sports level. He can shoot the ball. He can score it, certainly. And I would be prepared to see him be in the CBL this upcoming summer, assuming he should get drafted if he does declare, because he looks unbelievable. He's a name I would keep an eye out for if you aren't aware of who he is. I talking about standings. It's the winter break. We're going to get right into the U Sports winter break standings update. I'm going to talk about the top 2 teams from each quote unquote conference / division. When we get to the OUA, it'll be by division. But there is one exception. There is one division where I talk about 3 teams, and they're going to be the first one I talk about just because of number of games played. So let's get right into it. We're going to talk about the Canada West Conference right away. This is my home conference. If you didn't know, I'm from Manitoba. And Regina, the University of Regina, is 8-0 to start the year and are atop alone at the peak of the summit in the Canada West Conference right now, undefeated. Now, they've had a pretty easy schedule so far this year. They play all the harder teams in the second half, so we'll see if they keep that up, but props to them for being number 1 right now in the Can West. Like I said, so here's the second team, but they will be the second of 3 teams I talked about here in the Can West. I just talked about Diego Mafia. It's the University of Victoria. They're 5-1. This is why the U Sports standings, I took this from their website, so don't get mad at me. They base it off of win percentage. So if you go off win percentage and not number of games played, UVic is second. But obviously they look good. They should be a contender at top of the conference. They play U of M towards the end of the season, and that will be a game that I will be attending. I think that'll be a really good game. Then in third place, tied for second based on win percentage, is the University of Manitoba. They are 8-2. They've played a couple tough opponents. They have a tougher second half of their schedule, but they played some good teams so far. So we'll see if they can keep it up. Obviously, they've got CBL Rookie of the Year, Simon Hildebrandt on their team. Off to a slower start than you would expect, but if he picks it up, then the Bison should be in for a run again here in the Can West. Now moving on to the OUA West division, I guess, if you want to call it. Obviously, OUA is split, if you don't know, into 3 divisions, the West, the East, and the Central. So we're going to go right through them right away. Like I said, we'll start with the OUA West. Laurier is atop the division at 8-2. Western is at 7-2. It's pretty packed there in the West, a little bit at the top. So we'll see if that shakes out a little bit more. Now moving on to the Central. TMU, Toronto Metropolitan, is up in first at 6-4, but tied for first, which I'm not 100% sure how they determine it, but McMaster is also tied for first at 6-4. I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure if they have played or not, or whatever the head-to-head that they decide on, but both of those 2 teams have exact identical records at the top of the OUA Central. And then the big dog, the team to beat, and we'll talk about them in a minute here when we get to the rankings. OUA East, the best team, and I think it's a pretty unanimous statement, the best team in all of U Sports, the University of Ottawa. The GGs are 10-0. It's really hard to argue. They've played some pretty good teams, and they look unstoppable. But along with the team that is undefeated and looks like the best team in the conference, in the conference and potentially even in the country, is the team nobody expected to be towards the top. It's Ontario Tech. They're in second place right now in the OUA East at 7-2. Moving on to RSEQ, the Quebec Conference, the University of Quebec and Montreal, they're 5-1. And Bishops oh my God, I'm gonna have to cut that. Okay, we'll start that again. I need water. Holy shit. Have to do some editing. Now moving on to the La Belle Province, the RESQ conference, the Quebec conference. We've got oh my God. Okay, we'll try that again. Now moving on to La Belle Province, the RESQ, the Quebec conference, the Université de Québec à Montréal lead the division, the conference at 5-1. Bishop's University is in second at 4-2. They are the only division to not have played more than 6 games per team, but I'm sure obviously that will even out. And then moving into the Maritimes, the ASU Memorial leads the conference at 6-4, and Cape Breton are in second at 5-4. We're going to quickly move right into now the rankings update going into the winter break. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, they're the best team in all of U Sports. They're pretty unanimous. They're undefeated. The GGs, the University of Ottawa, are in first place. And in second place, the University of Victoria. So the Vikes are right behind them there at 5-1. We'll see how their second half of the season goes. In third is Queen's University. I didn't mention them, but they are tied for second. Tech at 7-2. But obviously the committee thinks that they are better than Ontario Tech, at least at this moment in time. UBC is in at 4. The Thunderbirds have had a pretty good season thus far. A team I mentioned that is atop of their division in the OUA is Western University at 5. Then you got the two Manitoba teams, University of Winnipeg at number 6, the University of Manitoba at number 7. Then it's the University of St. Francis Xavier coming in at number 8. Toronto Metropolitan TMU in at number 9. And at number 10, it's Carleton University. Pretty big staple there. And that is your top 10 teams so far in the entire country in U Sports. Now for one of the final segments we will do on the show for this week. Normally, we work our way all the way this way. So we go NBA, NCAA, U Sports, and we would have a high school segment. Hopefully that will be coming in the future. And then normally we go back, you stay on the topic of U Sports, NCAA, then the NBA in matchups of the week. So we're going to talk about the NCAA Canadian matchup of the week this week. Not really too many Canadians are playing one another at the NCAA level. Lots of schools are different doing things with their schedules, but one matchup of two really good teams right now in the NCAA are going at it on Friday night, and one of them does have a Canadian on it that does play prominently. Gonzaga, number 10th ranked Gonzaga, will be taking on number 5 ranked UConn. Ryan Nembhard of Gonzaga will be hoping to lead the Bulldogs to a really good ranked victory over the Huskies. And the NBA Canadian matchup of the week, I think this one's a really good one. After you've watched Ryan Nembhard and Gonzaga play on Friday night, buckle up. It's going to be a good one on Saturday night at 8 p.m. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and the Oklahoma City Thunder will be taking on Jamal Murray and the Denver Nuggets. Hopefully they'll be guarding each other. I'm not sure if they will be. I'm sure the defensive matchups will be different, but just to see both of them on the floor, both two Canadians vying for all-star nominations, should be really fun. All right, so that's it for the show this week. We'll be back next week to recap, hopefully, maybe a little bit of this. We'll maybe change it up, probably with U Sports being a little bit different next week. Obviously, with them being off, probably really won't be any sort of that talk, but definitely some NBA and NCAA talk. And maybe we'll have a guest on next week, talk about some high school and prep hoops. And yeah, so hopefully some Canadians go off for some big weeks this week and obviously play well. That's all we want to see. We want to see them well represented at every single level that they're playing at. And so until next week, my name is Elliot Russenholt, and I will see you guys next time.